Much of Texas this morning covered by stratocumulus. This is a layer at about 2,000 feet, and that's being caused by the very strong cold air advection, creating steep lapse rates in the lowest 2,000 to 3,000 feet of the atmosphere and interacting with some of the residual moisture in the boundary layer. And here is a sounding valid for the opening footage showing what the conditions look like aloft. We have moderately deep cold air extending up to about 6,000 feet or so. Down below that, a lot of cold air, and the core of that cold air located about right there at about 2,000 to 3,000 feet. And with that strong cold air advection, especially at that level, the warm ground down beneath, we get a very steep lapse rate there in the lowest couple thousand feet. And with those dew points holding pretty close to the temperatures, we've got a high relative humidity, and so we can quickly get cloud layers forming. Instability plus moisture gives us clouds. The surface map for this morning shows that low pressure area that was in Texas yesterday has lifted northeast into Illinois. The cold front has shifted eastward from Houston and Victoria all the way to Alabama and Tennessee. And in behind it, a new surge of slightly cooler Canadian air. Now the warm front is lifting north pretty well there in Kentucky, but not so much in the Carolinas. We've got cold air damming taking place across the central Atlantic region. And we're talking about this area right here. You can see those temperatures still holding in the mid-40s in North Carolina, contrasting with the 50s just to the west. And it's the Appalachians right here holding that colder air back and preventing it from advecting into the low pressure area. And normally, if we could get that advection going, we would replace it with warm air from the south. But that's not happening, so as that low approaches the Appalachians, we should see kind of a warm front shape a little bit like a wave, kind of like that. And as a result, we're going to get warm air overspreading that cold dome. That means isentropic lift, low-level ascent, and some enhancement of the precipitation. And further northward, we have the much colder air, the possibility of wintry weather. Out to the west, things are quieting down quite a bit. We can see that there is a plateau high developing in eastern Idaho and northern Utah. Some of that valley fog starting to set in with cold temperatures beneath the inversion. In the Pacific Northwest, we have another storm system approaching the coast of Washington and British Columbia. And further north up in the Arctic, we do have some Arctic air. Tracing out the minus 20s, we get a pattern like that. And that's showing that Arctic air is starting to reestablish itself in the Mackenzie River plain of the Northwest Territories. Out to the west, we've had that record-breaking Aleutian low. That's already starting to fill, according to the GFS, with a central pressure of 931 millibars. But we did see in the reports yesterday record low pressure, 27.30 inches, with a sea level pressure of actually 924.8 millibars. You can see that the algorithm failed in converting that number right there, but that's 924.8 millibars, and that sets a record in the Aleutians for the lowest pressure ever. And with that, we had seas up to 50 feet as that low moved through the Aleutians. And satellite imagery. Well, this isn't going to be fantastic imagery, but this shows the great record-setting storm. Shemya located about right there, and what you're going to see when I run this forward is daylight setting in, and the system will emerge, and there it is. can see it briefly there. And about the point where we had the record-setting pressure, that was 22Z. So that's going to be located right about there. So here's a look at the infrared imagery starting out yesterday at about 11Z. That's going to be in the middle of the night yesterday morning. There's our low. The front's running about like this with a occlusion extending back to the north. So we're going to look at this area right here. That's where it is the deepest. And that record low pressure, 54321, right there. That's where it bottoms out, and then it starts to fill as it wanders out over those colder waters. Now, to really see the intricate detail, we have to go to the polar orbiter satellites, and there we go. It's not great, but that'll give us a little bit more detail of that storm. And which of those islands is Shemya? Well, referring back to this map, we've got Attu and Casco Cove right there on the big island, and it appears Shemya is on this smaller island out to the east. So that's going to be right there where we're getting that very low pressure. Concentric bands leading right into the center of that thing, and it's kind of a stroke of luck that it came so close to that weather station. And that's a view from another satellite. That's the Suomi satellite. And we can kind of tab those back and forth to get kind of a poor man's animation. Yeah, we got NOAA 20 there too. So there's some more animation for you. So that's our cool record-breaking storm out there in the Bering Sea. So there's how things look on the polar orbiters today in the U.S. A lot of snow up north and some down in West Texas, but we can use the geostationary satellites to see that better. So here's the Texas snowfield showing a little bit of stratus burning off. But where the clouds are not moving out there in West Texas, that's going to be the snow cover. And if you want to look at the counties, there you go. That's for the record books. You can see just exactly where that snow is. Adding on the interstates, I can see we've got quite an intense band there around Big Spring down to just west of San Angelo and down towards the Iran, Fort Stockton area. That area pretty hardly hit, and it looks like out east, that's going to be lighter snow, maybe a mix of sleet and freezing rain affecting places like San Angelo, Abilene, and areas off the Caprock. And there's Old Mexico showing some of the snow cover north of Chihuahua to the Big Bend. But that has had time to melt due to the warm ground and the fact that about 24 hours has passed since the weather event. And one other interesting note, it looks like the hill country did get some snow. That looks like around Kerrville up to Fredericksburg and back to just south of Junction. So that was a pretty close one for San Antonio. That brings us to our current weather situation. Yep, there is some snow up there in Minnesota and the Dakotas. And over Missouri and Illinois, we do see that system coming up from the southwest. Definitely some better convection overriding that dammed cold air. But further out to the west, we've got a dry slot working into the south and east side of that weather system. Let's pull back and we can see that a little bit better. Here's how that weather system looked early yesterday, coming out of Old Mexico into Texas. Very potent, and then it moves north overnight. You can see what looks like a dry slot coming into the southeast side. And there is some dry air there, but it's mostly in the upper troposphere. There's some considerable moisture that's wrapped into the system in the mid and lower levels, and it's not really detected very well by the satellite. Now, around Nashville up towards Cincinnati, that dry slot has worked down towards the surface. But further north, not quite the case. And if you compare that and look at the water vapor imagery, You can see that the picture looks a little bit different. How's that sampled by the models? Let's go right in the middle of that dry slot there in Kentucky. And as you can see here, a lot of dry air at 700 millibars in the mid-levels, but below 850 it is still pretty moist. Here's the surface plots at this time. The main low pressure area is north of St. Louis, but you can see all around it 30s. So that's pretty well cut off from the warm air. The warm air is found out in Kentucky. You can see 67 there at Frankfort, 64 at Lexington, and even 72, 74 at Nashville. The cold front most likely right there, and then the warm front, well, that's definitely between this station and that station. And then that front will recurve down to the south, and you can see to the east of there, east winds, IFR conditions, and precipitation. And that's that cold air damming we were talking about. The occlusion itself, that kind of spirals up into the main low pressure area. So this area here ripe for new development. And then the areas of precip, let's check that out. Freezing rain coming down at Lafayette up towards South Bend, and looks like that's a thin band that goes out towards Quincy, and probably in this zone right here. Up to the north, snow, northern Illinois there, and it looks like the rest of it to the south is mostly rain. Now, as you can imagine, the warm nose is going to be right in this area here, feeding up to the northwest. We went over this yesterday with that system in Texas, and you saw how it was set up in the 850 millibar chart. I'm not going to go over that here because you can go to an 850 chart and apply those same techniques, and you will see pretty much the same thing. Freezing rain definitely favored along that warm nose, especially where it's bringing in above freezing air in the top part of the boundary layer, up near 850 to kind of in that region right there. So if you have cold air at the surface with that warm nose overhead, that's going to be a good setup for freezing rain or sleet if the cold layer is deep enough, like you might find right around here. All right, you taught me into it. We'll look at the warm nose. There's the chart at 850, that's 18Z, and that's that warm air coming in from the south. You can see that the axis runs from about Cincinnati up towards the Chicago area. And within that warm nose, 50-knot winds coming out of the south. Now let's take a look at a sounding. Let's try writing here. And you can see that effect there, that very large area of above freezing conditions. Remember the zero line, that's located right here, dividing the freezing part of the column from the above freezing part of the column. So yeah, this is going to melt any snow that falls into it. However, if temperatures are cold, like we see right here, then we'll get freezing of that precipitation, refreezing of that liquid. So the only kind of precip you're going to get out of this is freezing rain, if this is cold enough, sleet, if this is deep enough, or rain if it doesn't have a chance to freeze in that very lowest portion. It's this area here that's really critical, the depth and how much cold air there is. So what to expect? Well, I like the ARW quite a bit. So let's check that out. The ARW always starts at 12Z. Let's bring that up to the current time. There we go right there. Now it's showing everything liquid right around here, but we know that the temperatures are slightly below freezing, so this does take some adjustment. In fact, I think the model might be a little bit off, but we can look at the general pattern. Run that forward and we can see the main low pressure area moving up into Indiana. Probably the mixed phase precip areas are going to be right in here. Northern Indiana up to southern Michigan, and then north of that, Chicago up to central Michigan, snow. And that brings us to the northeast U.S. We'll just take a quick look at what to expect tomorrow. With that warm air advection over the cold air damming, we're going to be seeing a freezing rain event for much of Pennsylvania today into tonight, and then everything spreads north into the upstate New York region. The main low comes out with the cold air advection flowing in from the west for Saturday, and then we just end up with some cold core type precip in upstate New York. So we're looking at kind of like two systems, the main cold core low and the main baroclitic zone off to the east, and those will be approaching at different times. And then just a look at the entire country. If we tried to do the forecast for everybody, we would probably be here about 3 hours. So let's just take a look at the important details. I'm going to switch over to the GFS. And we can see that system lifting out of the Midwest. There's where we're going to be at tomorrow. Looks pretty nice across much of the country. A wave down on the south part of that front, developing in Georgia and South Carolina, and then the main cold air across Missouri. And it looks like that's that second punch coming in from behind. Let me back that up. That's it right there at this current time across New Mexico. And we're talking about this system right here. Now, this does not have very much moisture to work with, so it's not really going to develop all that much. It's going to be mostly a mid and upper level feature. But you can see the impact as that rolls out overnight. Maybe some clouds over Texas as that moves overhead. And then you can see that lifting up into Missouri tomorrow. A little bit of surface heating gets some snow showers going in that area. Out to the west, new area of low pressure developing that moves onshore, and you can see this new system coming together Sunday and Monday. And on the tail end, a new weather system coming into California. That's going to be tapping a moderate atmospheric river. In other words, if we look at the precipitable water, you can see that moisture surge coming inland, about 1 to 1.25 inch precipitable water. So we're going to be looking at maybe about 1 inch of rain in some areas, a little less than that in the valleys, and in the mountains, some decent snow. Probably be over a foot of snow, maybe 1 to 2 feet. And then things will cross the Rockies. You can see that going on right here, moving into Colorado for Tuesday, and then emerging into the Central Plains for Wednesday. There's our new low pressure system. Doesn't look like it's interacting with very much moisture, a little bit scarce there. And then it moves eastward. High pressure settling in across much of the country for next weekend. And I think we'll probably just stop about right there. Okay, if I haven't said it, Happy New Year. Hope you all are having a good one. Hope you enjoy your weekend. Take care, and we will see you again on Monday for the supporters and Tuesday for the rest of you. Enjoy your weekend. Bye-bye.